Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Clare Leslie Hall. Clare is a
Hi.
novelist. Clare is a novelist and journalist who lives in the wilds of Dorset, England with her family. Under the name Clare Empson, she published 2 thrillers that were published in the UK and Germany. Broken Country is her US debut. And look at this beautiful cover, which my screen is going to be difficult about. Welcome, Leslie.
Oh, hi, Danielle. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I absolutely
Okay.
love your podcast.
Oh, thank you. Now show us your gorgeous cover and tell us what little sticker there is on that cover that you can share with us now that it's live.
Yeah, amazingly enough, a dream come true, this. It's got a
Yes.
Reese's Book Club sticker.
Okay, lift
So
it
I
up a
am
little because we
I'm the
can
March pick
there.
for Reese's
Woo!
Book Club, which is the biggest thrill of my life. It really
It,
is.
I
So
mean,
exciting.
so okay, first of all, as we were talking about before we started to record, this is going to change your life. It's so exciting. Because obviously I've interviewed a few people who've been Reese picks. Tell us how it happened, because it's every author's dream to be a Reese pick. So tell us sort of how did you get the news?
So yeah, I was actually my husband works in the music industry. I was standing in the middle of a noisy gig watching one of his bands, and my phone went, and I saw that it was Karina, my US publisher, and so I took the call, and she just said, "You're not going to believe it, but you're going to be Broken Country is going to be the Reese pick for March 25." And that was actually quite a long time ago. So I've had to keep this phenomenal news secret for nearly a year.
Oh my God,
So
I
it's
can't even imagine.
absolute thrill.
That would be that. Well, it's so worthy. So I talked about this a little bit too before we got on air, because I absolutely devoured Broken Country. It was one of those stories that is just like it's a love story, it's a thriller, it's a family drama, and so like with a beautiful literary voice. But I'm gushing. I do this when I love a book. So tell our listeners and our watchers about Broken Country.
Yeah, so Broken Country is it's about a very passionate love triangle that takes place in a small English village in Dorset, which is where I live, during the 1960s, and it culminates with a big murder trial in London. And it's really the story of Beth, a young woman who's completely torn between 2 very different men and 2 very different lifestyles, and what happens when Gabriel, her first love, returns to the village and basically turns her life upside down. And as you say, it's because you know from the opening sentence that a man's died and there's a question mark over who killed him. It's actually a thriller, a courtroom drama, a mystery, and a love story all rolled into one, I'd say.
It is. And so it's interesting because, my initial instinct was who died and how did they die? And that's always a story throughout throughout the book. But really, you get so swept up into Beth and her life, and you understand so completely how she is so torn, because both of these men are so wonderful and so starkly different, and both family men in their own ways, and it was beautifully done. So tell us, how do stories come to you? I know you have a couple of thrillers before. How can you tell us, do you remember how sort of Broken Country started for you?
Yeah, I do. It was actually Broken Country. It was one of these
Oh,
very rare sort of thunderbolt moments, which I've not had before or since, and I would love one right now for my next book. But basically, we live in this old farmhouse, and my husband was out running in the fields with our dog, who belonged to our youngest son. I've got 3 children. And it was lambing season, and the dog ran into a field of lambs, and the farmer threatened to shoot him. So it's kind of a real moment of horror. And that didn't happen, I'm happy to say. But within minutes of talking about it, I just got this really vivid love triangle pop into my head. I could see the farmer and his wife and in their field of sheep, and a young boy and his father running towards them, chasing after his dog.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I had the thought that the boy reminded the couple of the son they'd recently lost. And I also thought, oh, there might be a really powerful physical attraction between the boy's father and the farmer's wife. So it was like I got this ready-made love triangle and I just had to write it.
Well, so tell us once you had that idea, are you somebody who sort of lays it all out? How does it, what's your process? And does it change? Because I also know, every book can be a little bit different. So how does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I think I always have a beginning, a middle, and end. Although I would have to say with Broken Country, if you read the first draft, and there's probably 20, I'm a massive redrafter, and the last draft, a lot of it went. It changed from being a contemporary story to being a period story. It changed from Frank and Gabriel, the two men, having a voice to just Beth having a voice. So I just kept reworking it and reworking it. And I always had the love triangle at the heart, and I always had the dual timeline because I kind of knew from the beginning that I really wanted. So in 1955, you've got Beth and Gabriel falling in love passionately. And then in 1968, so alternate chapters, you've got Beth happily married to Frank. And I kind of wanted it to be like the reader would be swept up by the passionate love affair. And then, oh, you're in the next chapter and you're in this
Right.
marriage that seems pretty good. So I always had that dual timeline thing. But the murder trial actually came quite late on, like a couple of years in, when I thought, I knew a man died right from the beginning, but I thought if I could write a murder trial, this would really take the book in a new direction and give it a lot more suspense.
Hmm.
And at that point, I went to the Old Bailey, which is a very famous old courthouse in London,
Sure.
and you can watch from the public gallery there. It's incredible, actually. And I spent a week watching a murder trial and just looking at these barristers, the prosecution, defense, and the whole theatre of it was so inspiring. And then I came back and wrote my own version. And I think it kind of took the book in a really different direction, actually. So
So
yeah, comes in stages for me, a lot
right,
of
right.
stages.
And I actually, so like we have a lot of listeners who are aspiring authors. So to hear you say, a couple of years later, it's so important because, there's this idea that writers put out and some do, of course, that we put out a book a year and it's super easy. And a book takes, I'm actually, working on a book that I think I started in 2021. It's the longest any book has ever taken me. But I'm very proud of it. And like you said, it's had 20 drafts, points of view have gone, points of view have been added, whole chunks. I think the out file is as big as the final draft of the book, that you just pull so much stuff out of it that doesn't work, but I don't know how to get there, right, without writing it. You
That's it. And I love hearing you say that because something that I think is really interesting, and I don't have the answer to this, but is I'd love someone to tell me, when do you stop? Because I actually gave this book up twice. And once on the advice of an agent. And I've got a different agent now, but I gave up because that was what I was told to do, but that my heart pulled me back into it. But there were times when I thought, okay, well, maybe it's a relief to give up. It's very, very hard to know. I think the only thing we have is our gut, and if we love the story and the characters enough to see it through and go through all that painful bits, I
Well,
guess.
I'd say it's worth it since you look at where you are with your Reese pick. And actually the story that is coming out next year for me also was an agent told me that it wasn't sellable, that it wasn't a story. And
Yay.
it's with Simon and Schuster and a beautiful imprint, and I couldn't be more thrilled, but you do have to, it's like a salmon. You have to swim upstream, and know when to rest. And maybe, some salmon die, but if you don't fight, against sort of one person's opinion, there's no way to make it in this business. Every opinion is so subjective, and you have to, all the advice you get is based on one person's opinion. It's a strange, strange business.
And actually, I like what you say about knowing when to rest, because I think if I did anything and it wasn't intentional, it was almost that giving it up and pausing it that helped me see what I had to do. So
Hmm.
sometimes I think as writers, it's really hard to step away from your desk or your project. You just go, if I sit here for 8 hours, it will work. And it
Right.
doesn't. You have to
No.
kind of move away from it, and then it sort of comes. Yeah,
It's
I
so true.
think
It's
that's
a
good.
very, yeah, it's a very, and it's, and then of course there's expectations about sort of, once you're gonna, once you have a book out, they want that they're already asking for the, people will already be asking, you're gonna be celebrating your Reese pick and people will be like, when's the next book coming? And you think, oh my gosh, just let me have a moment to just, like bask in the glory of this book. So it is wonderful. And I'm curious about because Frank and Gabriel are so different. But obviously we see the similarities between Leo and Bobby, the two boys, the boy that Frank and oh my gosh.
Beth, Beth.
My brain just went
Yeah.
whoosh, melt.
Oh, I have
Yeah.
that all the time.
That Frank and Beth lost and Gabriel's son Leo, we see those similarities, but Frank and Gabriel really could not be in many ways more different. And yet both are lovable. So when you did this, when you were building these characters and you saw, the scene with the dog and the lamb, is so, that really is so, such a beautiful start, so dramatic, so engrossing. So I love the way that started. I love that that was a real thing. But how did you develop these characters? Were they different? Have they changed a lot since your initial imagining of them? Do you do character
Yeah,
sketches? I'm always curious. How do you get to know them?
yeah, it's a good question. I don't. I mean, you know those sort of things you get those questionnaires, don't you? And color of their eyes and what they have for breakfast and some people that works, but it doesn't work for me. I'm much more vague than that. But I think I have I'm pulled towards an emotion. So
Mhm.
like Beth, her emotion was yearning. And with Frank, I'm gonna say his emotion was guilt, trapped guilt probably. And I think Gabriel was yearning for Beth. And I think so Gabriel is the thing about the two men, and it made it in a way it made it quite easy to create because to show the dichotomy that she's in, and I was asking the question, is it possible to love two people at once? And
Mm,
I think with Beth's case, both men connect to and ignite a really separate part of her character, and that's
mhm,
quite unusual. So Gabriel is bookish and romantic and creative, just like her, and Frank is far more down to earth and funny and very caring in his own way, very loving. And he introduces Beth to life on the farm, and it completely inspires her just as it has him, and she sort of becomes immersed in the landscape. It really becomes an integral part of who she is. So I think I had to sort of exacerbate, as it were, the two male characters, and they're the two different sides of her character. But in the end, with Beth, I think more than choosing a man, she's really working out who she is and what's most important to her, and that's kind of the journey that she goes on in the novel.
I also love the idea of the men's very different the motherhood is a huge theme in the book as well. And obviously Beth's own experience with motherhood, having lost her son, and but also the both the men have very different experiences with mothers, right? Frank and his younger brother lost their mother when his younger brother was quite young, and Gabriel's mother is physically present but emotionally not available, and a rather sort of distanced and difficult, harder woman. And I love that theme too because it's for better or worse, the mothers are so integral to who we become as humans. And not to say that fathers aren't, but really, I still believe, and I suppose maybe I'm sort of antiquated in my view of it, but I do feel like who your mother is, how you're mothered, that nurture, the nurturing of your upbringing really does it dictate so much about how you how you can love, how you feel loved, how sort of how you feel who you feel you can become. All that is so, it seems to be sort of at its core mothering. So was that something you thought about? Because obviously you're a mother, and Beth is motherhood is so important to Beth, and um, it seems like such a big part of the book.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. You've actually made me think about it in a different way. I think everything you say is very true. I think that Frank's mother and Jimmy's mother, the fact that they lose her when they're children, um, really has such a big effect on both of them because these are 1950s men. They're a product of the 1950s, and their father particularly is, and he doesn't give them any space to grieve. So they just shut that pain down in themselves, and it comes out in different ways. You know, Frank doesn't really express his emotions, and Jimmy, as we know, is quite a sort of troubled character, and really that's just because his reaction to losing his mother when he's 9 is that he stops caring about himself and he just will put himself into any sort of dangerous situation. And that's a kind of real risk taking recklessness that goes with
Hmm.
Jimmy. And with Gabriel, I completely agree. She was quite a hard. Gabriel's mother is a troublemaker, but she's got her reasons for being as flawed as she is. And she was the character I had to sort of work quite hard to not make her like a pantomime baddie because she
Mm-mm.
does behave pretty badly, but she doesn't give neither Gabriel's father, who's very distant, or his mother, who, like you say, is emotionally distant, give him the sort of love that he craves. And he craves what Beth actually has, which is a sort of noisy, relaxed, comfortable family and
Yes.
parenting style. And that enables her. She's sort of the only character who is able to express her emotions honestly. Even Gabriel's quite closed down in a way.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's why he's drawn to Beth because she's much more emotionally honest than he is. So yeah, I think the mothering and also another question I was asking with Beth. I mean, it was quite hard as a mother myself. I've sort of have probably, it's unimaginable to think of the pain of that loss.
Hmm.
And I always sort of thought I wouldn't write a book about that, but actually the story came and Beth emerged. Beth was really quite sort of whole for me from the beginning, actually, because I knew how much pain she was in and because I knew that she was able to express it. Whereas I knew that the men were very closed down and unable to express their pain.
Yeah.
And I think the question I was asking with Beth is, where does all that love go when your child no longer exists? And that was
Mm.
sort of that was really a big part of her
Yeah,
journey.
I mean, it literally, like, I can get emotional about it. I think it is a very dark place as mothers, it's obviously it's a dark place to go to, but also I think it's exploring something that happens to people, but also that I think we live with as sort of the worst possible fear. As soon as that baby is born, it is this miracle of joy and love and a sort of explosion. And at the same time, there is the shadow of it all the time, right? What would happen? What would I do? How would I handle it if something happened? And so you're always, looking at, like, is my child going to be okay? Are they safe? Who's watching them? And then of course, in the case of, Frank and Beth, that the very worst, you know, fear comes true. And there is that how do you recover from that as a family, as a couple? How do you get through, especially when, who's to blame and all these, there's all these, and I think exploring that is so powerful because we have, it is in all of us, the fear, the flip side of having so much love for something that seems so fragile. It's so, helpless. So,
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And also I'd say we feel like that when we fall in love as well, don't
yeah.
we?
Yes.
Any form of love, you feel it comes with that dark underside, which is the fear that you won't have it one day.
Yeah, the
Um,
vulnerability. Yeah.
the vulnerability. But what I think I was really interested to explore with Frank and Beth was a very good, strong marriage that is in turmoil because of child bereavement, and can that marriage recover? And I think the problem, Frank is a great guy, a very good man, but he doesn't give Beth the space to grieve, and that's because he feels guilty and responsible for the way that Bobby dies. And I think in that situation, the marriage is going to implode. And so that's kind of what I was really looking at, and whether they could actually be honest with each other and give each other what they need and get their relationship back on track.
Yeah, and it really is beautifully done. And we don't give spoilers, but I really feel like you have to go read this book, like because and also you have to set aside the time to just read it because you're not going to want to put it down. I got so invested in the characters, in Beth and also in the heartache of all these people, and Jimmy's wife, Nina. I mean, there's just the cast of characters is relatively small, but which is I think lovely because we really get to know each of them, and we can see how they respond to their own situations. And you're right, it's possible that Tessa, who's Gabriel's mother, could have come across as a very sort of, the sort of the mother that doesn't want her son to be with somebody who's below his station, and the sort of, Disney, villainess. But she really isn't. She's very, you could, and you know enough about her own story to understand, why she is the way she is, which is how all of us become, all the things we do that are unkind or even cruel come from some, you know, protective device that's our own fear, our own vulnerability. And so we're all, there's flaws in all of us. And Beth too, she's not, obviously she's not perfect, and she makes mistakes, but we are right along with her the whole time thinking, oh God, so just a beautiful story, Claire. I just was so bowled over. And of course Reese loved it. It just makes perfect sense to me. That is
Oh,
so amazing. So tell us, what are you going to do? What's the, I hope it's like champagne and family and wonderful things. What will you do to celebrate?
well, yeah, do you know what? I'm sort of having three launches. I do love a party,
There
but
you
yeah,
go.
there you go. So I'm having one in London with my publisher, and that's going to be really lovely because it's just in a little gorgeous bookshop called Goldsborough Books, and Goldsborough Books is a fabulous old bookshop, and they've done a special edition for Broken Country. So I'm having a launch there with friends and family and publishing folk. And then I'm actually coming out to New York, and I'm having a launch in New York. So I'm really excited about that. And that's just amazing for me because I'll get to see my book in shops. And it's
Yes.
just so fun. It really is. I'm so excited. My husband's coming out, and I think we have a day of downtime, and I'm like, I just really want to wander around looking in the bookshops. That's it.
Of
That's all I want
course.
to do.
Of
And then
course.
and this I know this is excessive, but then in about 2 weeks' time, in the Compasses in the pub, there's a pub in Broken
Oh,
Country.
yes.
It's an actual pub, and it's really oldie worldy. It's like stepping back in time. It's like time travel. You go in and it's really dark, and it's got these old flagstone stone floors. It's just like the pub in the book, and it's got sort of
Yes.
farming tackle on the wall. Anyway, I'm having a party there for local friends. So that's going to be so much fun. And yeah.
That doesn't sound excessive to me at all. That sounds very, very reasonable. But we have quite a big, group of listeners. Are you going to be signing books in New York? Are you having will there
Oh, yes,
be,
I am.
okay. Okay. So
Yes, I am.
where do we find your schedule?
I'll tell you what, I'll email it to you so we can put it in the show notes. Would that
Yes,
work?
that would be wonderful.
Because yeah, I'm going to be at a few Barnes and Nobles signing, and
Okay.
I would love to see listeners there. That would be amazing.
Okay, and also tell us, are you on Instagram, or do you have a website so people can sneak a peek at also it's sort of, where you might be signing. You're going to be, now that you're going to be in very, very high demand, you need a assistant who's going to populate
Oh,
all your visits.
yeah, my husband is he says he's my PA and he said he's had enough of it.
Oh, of course, right.
Only
Yes.
really because he does my everything, my tech support, you name it.
Hmm.
All
I
the
love
things I
that.
don't like doing. So I have got I'm on Instagram at Clare Leslie Hall, and I've actually got a brand new author website which will be live any day now, and that's clarelesliehall.com.
And that's Claire.
And I'll put the events on there. That's a really good
Yes.
point. That's
Yes,
a
please,
really good point.
please
I'll
do.
do that.
Yes.
Yes, I
And
will.
and on Instagram, and I'll make sure to tag you on Instagram so that people can check your Instagram site. And Claire, just so we're clear, is with no I, Clare. That's my daughter's name, but we spell it the French way, and Claire obviously is the English way with no I. So.
That's right. And then Leslie Leslie, and then Hall is Hall.
And the fun thing is we'll be able to everybody will be able to Google Reese pick and and there you will be front and center. So we won't, probably people will not have a hard time finding you, but yes, we want to hear all the places you be. I will not be well, when are you going to New York? In March?
I'm going to be there on the second. So yes, on the 2nd of March.
So
Second.
exciting. I wish I
Yeah.
was going to be there, but I do have lots of fabulous friends who will be there. So I'll put a picture of this up ahead of time so people can just of the podcast and your beautiful face so that they can go and find you because that is so, so exciting. So it was what a treasure to get to hear all this incredible news and to get to celebrate your beautiful book. Show us the cover one more time, and you have to hold it a little higher because I can only see the bottom half. There
Thank
she
you.
is with the
Isn't
big,
it beautiful?
it's beautiful, and that gorgeous white and yellow sticker that we all recognize. Claire, what a joy! I can't wait to read whatever comes next, and I hope to get to meet you in person. I'm such a
Same.
fan. So.
Oh, this has been so much fun. Thank you very much for having me, Danielle.
Thank you for sharing your time with us and for Broken Country. And like I said, everyone, please do go find it. You will not be sorry. What a beautiful book. This has been Killer Women with Clare Leslie Hall and Broken Country, March 2025's Reese pick, which is so exciting. I get shivers every time I say that. And we will see you next time. Bye.